All right, let's bring you this very worrying discussion now. A study by Statistics South Africa shows that children are exposed to high levels of violent crime. According to the study, most reported assault cases involving children were committed by individuals known to them, including relatives, other household members, friends or acquaintances. Let's unpack these numbers now. Molayi is the Deputy Director General at Statistics South Africa, and Dumisile Nala is the National Executive Officer at Childline South Africa. To both of our guests, thanks very much indeed for coming on. And what an incredibly difficult discussion this is to have, but when we take a look at the statistics from police, I want to begin with you, Solly. I imagine that many of our guests, many of our viewers who are watching this afternoon may not be surprised what these numbers do tell us.
Good day, Michelle, and good day to the viewers. I think maybe to bring context into the report, so this is the series 2, this is the second report that we've been published. And for this report, we decided that we need to look at crime against children. We've used 3 sources of data that's coming from SAPS, as we mentioned, and also our own household survey data that we're collecting on an annual basis. What we also have done also for this report, we also looked at the report that we are also releasing on an annual basis, which looks at marriages and looking at the specifically for children. So these are the 3 sources that we have used. For police, we managed to get data from 2015, 2016 financial year up until 2019, 2020. So that's the period of that we managed to get the data. So the analysis that we did for data that's coming from SAPS is only based on that particular interval.
Right. Dumisile, I want to bring you into the discussion here because part of what this report does say, you know, we have the foundation phase at school for a reason, right? It's because we're setting the foundation for a child that will carry them through to the rest of their primary school and then high school career. And the very same goes for this report. The growth and well-being of a child constitutes the foundation for society overall, Dumisile. And we're seeing that impact that this is having on these children as they go into adulthood.
Certainly, it is of great concern because we know the impact that abuse has on the psyche of a growing child. We know the impact it has on their emotional well-being, on their psychological well-being, and for some even on their physical well-being. So it is of great concern. And what you see, even when children and young people grow up and they become parents themselves, the impact of the abuse they sustained earlier on in their lives also has consequences even at that particular point of their growth and development. So the consequences are severe and long-lasting, not only for those children, but for us as a society at large.
Solly, can you help us unpack some of the gender disparities in your report for boys under the age of 17 and then for girls under the age of 17? Where are they more likely to be victims?
Thank you so much, Amisha. So and I think to the point that was mentioned earlier by my colleague here, we wanted to look at the crime and look at it from applying a gender lens on it. So when you look at it and you look at the female age 17 and years and younger, they are more likely to be affected by rape, sexual assault, child trafficking, and attempted common robbery. But when you look at for males, it's mostly murder, assault with the GBH, attempted murder, common robbery, and common assault. So when you look at the list for males, the sexual offense, they're not on top of the list. But for females, rape and sexual assault, and also child trafficking, which is something that we notice also from our data that, you know, child trafficking, if you look at it from 2015, 16 up until 2019 and 20, it's actually have increased. I mean, in 2015 and 16, we're sitting around 111, 117. Then it moved up to 247. So it shows you that over time, it's also have increased. So that is the analysis that we also managed to do in the report itself.
Yeah, that's absolutely heartbreaking, isn't it? Before even reaching adulthood, that these children are living through these kinds of of circumstances. And I imagine, Dumisile, that the kinds of statistics that Solly is telling us about is very, very closely linked to the socioeconomic conditions of children.
Certainly, and it is also has to do with reporting. We are talking about boys or male children in particular, where we are not seeing a high number for the particular period we're talking about in terms of sexual assault and rape. But we also know where that is coming from in terms of the challenges for males and boy children to report when they have experienced abuse, particularly sexual abuse. So, and we still see that even now, and I believe maybe as the report or the research continues, the numbers might have changed because we're seeing that boys are beginning to report sexual abuse and sexual assault much more than previously. But certainly from the work we do as an organization, as Childline, we see that a lot of this also has influences in terms of the socioeconomic background of the children that we work with, levels of poverty, unemployment, inequality. All of those factors contribute to the plight that our children are experiencing currently.
Yeah. Solly, I want to talk to you about how these numbers look province to province. And there are certain things I imagine, and you'll tell us more about what your findings are. There are certain things that we can say apply to us as a country, right? But there are certain parts of your research that are very much province specific. For example, most murder cases affecting children that were reported, and again, it's the reporting that's the issue, that were reported to police were in the Western Cape. And then most reported cases of sexual assault were in the Western Cape, followed very closely by Gauteng and then KZN. The KZN is an interesting one because it has the highest proportion of rape cases for children 17 and younger. So there's proportion versus number of cases. So it looks like KZN and the Western Cape, Gauteng as well, are really struggling with issues of rape for children under the age of 17.
Yes, indeed. If you break it down by provinces, you see that certain types of crimes that are being reported are mostly common in certain provinces. So, like you have mentioned, if you look at the proportions for rape, mostly are common in KZN, and mostly are common in KZN. We're not saying that in other provinces they're not happening. Mm-hmm. So we're just saying that if you look at across the 9 provinces, they are mostly in KZN. Child trafficking was more prominent in Gauteng. Your sexual assault was also most common in Western Cape. And as you go through the list, you look at the attempted murder, assault with GHB, is mostly common in Western Cape. Then the common robbery was mostly common in Gauteng. So if you look at the provinces that we've mentioned, it's Gauteng, Western Cape, and KZN. Yeah. That's where, when you look at the list of these categories, where they are mostly common.
Yeah, and that speaks to what your findings also were insofar as metropolitan versus non-metropolitan areas in the country, and how there does seem to be a higher incidence of these cases in the metropolitan areas. Would that be accurate?
Yes, indeed. So we've noticed, and this also talks to the data that we're also collecting from the household. So if you look at the breakdown by non-metro, you'll see that actually your non-metro vis-a-vis your metro, the certain type of crime that are happening in metros. For example, your thefts of motor vehicle, your house breaking, and your house robbery. Those are type of crimes that you normally will find in your metros, and vis-a-vis your sexual offense, your assault, which are happening in the non-metros. The other thing that I also want to mention, Michelle, is that what we also, and this is also, echoed what my colleague said now about the sexual offenses. So with the type of household survey that we're conducting, when we get to the household and we want to talk about the household, about the sexual offenses that are happening within the household, I think this is also one of the difficult indicator that we are struggling to measure because of the sensitivity, firstly, and secondly, because most of this, as we know, and as we already mentioned earlier, that when we look at the research, it says it's somebody that you know within the space that are in. So it is a very difficult one. Hence, we are using data that's coming from the police to give us a sense of, from the reporting side, it's got its own limitation because it's reporting, but at least it gives us a good sense of where we are in terms of the sexual offense.
Yeah, absolutely. Dumisile, you know, excuse me, one of the important things is there are obvious scars on children when it comes to what they experience, the violence that they experience and they are subjected to. But there's also the impact of crimes that they witness, right? That they have to live through just from living in particular kinds of communities. Talk us through that.
Yes, certainly. So we can really talk about the double plight that our children are experiencing. So it's the abuse, as you say, but it's also witnessing abuse that is committed against the people they live with. When we talk about domestic violence, and what we see is when children are witnessing abuse between parents, it has a huge impact on them. And in some instances, you will see this through their behavior within the school environment. Children becoming aggressive themselves, children certainly developing not appropriate ways of dealing with conflict and challenges in their lives. So the impact is major. And sometimes when we offer interventions, we forget that witnessing abuse on its own creates a lot of damage as well on children and young people. And sometimes they even witness sexual violence against those around them. And then they will try to emulate what they have seen to other children that they interact with. And then we as communities talk about children as perpetrators, and we forget it is what they see and observe in their environments.
Yeah, it's just a heartbreaking story, and there really is no upside to the analysis from both of you. Let me thank you for your time. Solly Molayi is the Deputy Director General at Statistics South Africa, and Dumisile Nala is with Childline South Africa. To both of you, thanks very much indeed. Really painting a picture of a situation where our children are under siege.